Ever noticed that when life is good, people are all around you, but the moment you struggle, they vanish? You're at the lowest point in your life. Maybe you just lost your job. Maybe you're battling depression. Maybe the person you loved the most just walked away without looking back. And as you sit there, feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders, you reach out to the people you thought would always be there. Friends, family, even loved ones. But they disappear like ghosts. Instead of support, you get silence. Instead of comfort, you get excuses. Instead of loyalty, you get distance. Where did everyone go? Why do the same people who laughed with you, celebrated with you, and stood beside you in your best moments suddenly disappear when you need them the most? It almost feels personal, doesn't it? Like a betrayal. But what if I told you it's not really about you at all? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And this is exactly why abandonment hurts so much. It's not just that people leave. It's that they leave right when you need someone who understands, right when you need someone to hear you, to sit with you in the storm, to remind you that you're not alone. But instead, what do you get? People avoiding you because your pain makes them uncomfortable. People disappearing because they don't know what to say. People turning cold because they only wanted the best version of you, not the real one. So why does this happen? Why do people abandon you when you're struggling? Is it selfishness, fear, or is there something deeper at play, something hidden in human psychology that Carl Jung uncovered? Stick with me, because once you understand this, you'll never see relationships the same way again. Reason number 1, you become a mirror of their own fears. When you struggle, whether it's financially, emotionally, or mentally, people don't just see your pain. They see themselves in you. They see their own fears, their own insecurities, their own weaknesses, and that terrifies them. Carl Jung called this projection, when people unconsciously place their own suppressed fears onto others. Have you ever noticed how some people distance themselves right when you need them the most? It's not always because they don't care. It's not always because they're selfish. Sometimes it's because you remind them of everything they're trying to avoid. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Most people spend their entire lives running from their own insecurities. They drown themselves in distractions, social media, work, relationships, anything to avoid facing their deepest fears. But when you are struggling, when you are broken, when you are in pain, it forces them to confront the very things they've been suppressing. Your pain reminds them of their own vulnerability. Your failures force them to confront their own fears. And for many people, that's too much to handle. So they distance themselves, not because of you, but because of what you represent. Let's say you've always been the strong one in your friend group, the one who keeps it together, the one people turn to for advice, for energy, for support. But then something happens. You lose your job, go through a tough breakup, or hit an emotional low. Suddenly, you're the one who needs help. You reach out, but instead of support, you get distance. Your closest friend, someone you thought would always be there, starts making excuses. "I've been really busy lately. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Just stay positive, man." You can feel it. They're pulling away. Why? Because seeing you in pain reminds them of their own suppressed struggles. Maybe the job they hate, the relationship they're pretending is fine, or the emotions they've been numbing for years. Supporting you would mean acknowledging their own cracks. And that's terrifying. Jung believed that when people see qualities in others that they reject in themselves, they either admire them or run from them. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. If someone fears their own emotional vulnerability, they'll avoid people who show it. If someone fears failure, they'll distance themselves from those going through it. If someone fears rejection, they'll leave before they have to confront it themselves. Imagine you're in a relationship. Everything is fine when life is smooth. You're happy, successful, confident. But then life hits you. Maybe you lose a parent, go through depression, or face a major setback. At first they try to be supportive, but then you notice a shift. They seem less patient, less affectionate. They don't check in as much. Conversations feel forced. Eventually they leave. Not because they didn't love you, but because your pain brought up something they weren't ready to face. Maybe they grew up in a household where emotions were ignored. Maybe they never learned how to deal with discomfort. Maybe they fear losing control over their own life. Rather than sitting with those emotions, they run from them. And in running from their own fears, they run from you. Here's how to deal with it. 1. Don't take it personally. When people leave, it's often more about them than you. 2. Recognize projection. If someone pulls away, ask yourself, what does my struggle trigger in them? 3. Surround yourself with those who have done inner work. People who have faced their own darkness are the ones who won't fear yours. 4. Use this as a filter. Every time someone leaves during your lowest moments, you're not losing them. You're discovering who was never truly there. Reason number 2. People want the good times version of you. Let's be honest, most people are not in your life because they love you unconditionally. They're there because of what they get from you. Your energy, your positivity, your status, your success. They love the version of you that makes them laugh. They love the version of you that is successful and fun to be around. The version of you that doesn't need anything from them. But when all of that is stripped away, when you have nothing to offer except your raw, struggling self, many people realize they were never in it for you. They were in it for the benefits of being around you. The moment you become a burden, the moment your presence no longer adds to their comfort, they start to pull away. Because let's be real, most friendships and relationships are built on convenience, not loyalty. And when you're no longer convenient, people leave. Carl Jung once said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." People are drawn to others who reflect something they want, happiness, status, excitement, or even just distraction. And this is where relationships get tricky. Imagine everything was always going well for you. You've been the strong, successful friend. You're the one people come to for advice, for fun nights out, for motivation. But then life hits you hard. Suddenly the dynamic changes. Instead of being the one who gives energy, you need support. Instead of being the one who uplifts, you're the one who needs lifting. And that's when you see people's true colors. Some will stand by you, but many, they'll disappear. Not because they hate you, but because your struggle reminds them that life is fragile, that they too could fall apart one day. Most relationships, whether friendships, romantic or even family ties, are built on unspoken agreements. You provide entertainment, I stay around. You provide financial support, I stay loyal. You give me validation, I give you attention. But what happens when you can't provide those things anymore? Many people, consciously or not, begin to detach. Not because they consciously want to hurt you, but because deep down, they were never in the relationship for you. They were in it for what you gave them. A man who's always been the provider in his relationship loses his job. A woman who's always been emotionally supportive starts struggling with her own mental health. A successful person who's always been admired suddenly faces failure. What happens? The people who once praised them begin to pull away, because now that person is no longer a source of joy, security, or inspiration. And here's the part that hurts the most. People rarely admit this. They won't say, "Hey, I don't enjoy being around you now that you're struggling." Instead, they'll slowly become too busy. They'll stop checking in. They'll act like nothing happened, like your bond was never that deep to begin with. And suddenly you realize the love and friendship you thought were real were actually just conditional transactions. This realization can feel heartbreaking. But here's the truth. It's better to know who's real and who's not. It's better to lose fake connections than to live in an illusion. It's better to go through struggle alone than surrounded by people who never truly cared. Carl Jung believed that facing reality, no matter how painful, sets you free. Because once you see the truth, you stop chasing people who were never meant to stay. You stop trying to prove your worth to those who only wanted the good times version of you, and you start building a life filled with people who can handle both your highs and your lows. Reason number 3. Society fears weakness. In today's world, strength is admired, but weakness, it's avoided. From an early age, we're taught to present our best selves. Smile, be confident, show success. But what happens when you struggle, when you fail, when life knocks you down so hard you can't pretend anymore? Most people don't know how to handle that version of you. They get uncomfortable. They look away. They slowly start to disappear from your life. Why? Because society is built on the idea that weakness is contagious. People don't want to associate with struggle. Think about how we treat those who are struggling. The homeless person on the street, people avoid eye contact. The co-worker who's emotionally drained, people call them negative energy. The friend who's always venting about their problems, people stop responding. It's not that they don't care at all. It's that your struggles remind them of something they're terrified to face, their own vulnerability. Carl Jung described this concept as the repression of the shadow. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung. Your suffering forces them to confront their own inner fears. And for many, that's too painful. So instead of dealing with those emotions, they do the easy thing. They distance themselves. Imagine you lose your job and suddenly friends who used to check in stop calling. Or you go through depression and people start saying things like, "You need to stop being so negative. Just get over it and move on. I don't know how to help you." What they're really saying is, "Your pain makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to deal with it." And that's because deep down, they fear the same thing could happen to them. If they acknowledge your suffering, they might have to acknowledge their own hidden struggles. If they stay close to you, they might be pulled into your darkness. If they admit life can fall apart for you, they have to face the fact that it could happen to them too. And so they choose to detach, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Carl Jung explained that every person has two sides on the persona, the version of ourselves we present to the world. 2. The shadow, the hidden darker parts of ourselves we suppress. Society rewards the persona, the confident, successful, put-together version of you. But the moment you show your shadow, the fears, the pain, the struggle, people recoil. They don't want to see their own shadows, so they avoid yours. This is why people abandon you in hard times. They don't want to admit that success is fragile. They don't want to acknowledge their own insecurities. They don't want to be reminded that life can turn on them just as easily. So instead of facing reality, they create distance. Not because you're unworthy, but because they're afraid. Let's take, for instance, the successful businessman who loses everything. A man who was once wealthy and powerful suddenly goes bankrupt. People who once praised him as a genius now whisper behind his back. Invitations to dinners stop. His phone stops ringing. Because in their eyes, he is no longer an inspiration. He is a warning. Then, the woman who goes through a divorce. She had a happy, picture-perfect marriage, until one day it crumbles. Her married friends distance themselves. They don't check in, because her story shakes their own illusion that happily ever after is guaranteed. And the friend who falls into depression. He used to be the fun, energetic guy everyone wanted to be around. But now he's struggling with mental health. He stops getting invited out. Friends tell him to just cheer up, but don't actually offer support, because his struggle reminds them of their own emotional battles. People don't leave because of who you are. They leave because of what you remind them of. Carl Jung believed that the path to true self-awareness requires facing our shadows. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. But most people are not ready to face that level of truth, so they cling to illusions. They stay in their comfort zones. They abandon anything that forces them to confront their own pain. And unfortunately, That sometimes means abandoning you. But here's the good news. Carl Jung explained that society operates on the persona, the mask we wear to fit in. The persona is that which we are not, but which ourselves and others think we are. Carl Jung. People love the strong, put-together version of you because it aligns with what they expect. But when you drop the mask, when you're vulnerable, depressed, or lost, it disrupts their illusion of who you should be. And rather than dealing with that discomfort, they distance themselves. Reason number 4. Most people lack true empathy. Let's get one thing straight. Most people don't actually feel what you're going through. They don't actually understand your pain. They might say, "I'm here for you," or "Let me know if you need anything." But when you actually reach out,
silence.
Excuses. A polite but distant response. Why? Because deep empathy, the kind where someone stands beside you in your darkest moments, that's rare. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And that's exactly what happens when you're struggling. You try to express what you're going through, but most people can't comprehend it. Not because they're evil or selfish, but because they've never faced their own darkness. Empathy requires emotional strength. It requires someone to sit in your pain without running from it. Imagine this. You're drowning in heartbreak after a brutal breakup. Your emotions are raw, your thoughts feel chaotic, and all you want is for someone to truly understand what you're feeling. But instead of deep understanding, "You'll get over it. Just move on, plenty of fish in the sea. Stay positive." These aren't words of comfort. They're defense mechanisms. Because for someone who has never faced deep emotional pain, sitting with yours is uncomfortable. The truth is, most people don't know how to hold space for someone else's suffering. And if they haven't done their own inner work, if they've buried their pain under distractions, fake positivity or avoidance, then your pain will feel like an attack. There's a huge gap between empathy and pity. Pity is shallow. It's the quick, "I feel bad for you" response before moving on with their day. Empathy, on the other hand, requires effort, patience, and presence. Think about grief. If you've ever lost someone close to you, you know the difference between those who truly understood your pain and those who just felt obligated to say something. Empathetic people don't rush to fix you. They don't try to slap a positive label on your suffering. They sit with you in the darkness, without judgment, without discomfort, without needing to escape. But those people, they're rare. Most people avoid deep feelings, even their own. We live in a world where real emotions make people uncomfortable. When you're sad, people tell you to cheer up. When you're angry, they say you're overreacting. When you're depressed, they call you negative. Because most people don't know how to handle their own emotions. Carl Jung believed that people go through life wearing masks, hiding their real thoughts, their real fears, and their real pain behind socially acceptable behavior. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Carl Jung. And if they avoid their own pain, what do you think happens when they see yours? They withdraw. They minimize it. Or worst of all, they disappear. Here's the reality check. When you're at your lowest, expect to stand alone. This is a brutal truth, but one you need to hear. When you hit rock bottom, you will see who truly understands you and who was only there for the easy times. And many will fail the test. Not because they hate you, not because they're bad people, but because deep connection requires deep understanding, and most people just don't have it. Reason number 5. Struggle exposes who really cares. Carl Jung believed that every crisis in life serves a deeper purpose. It reveals truth. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And one of the biggest truths, not everyone who smiles at you is truly in your corner. When you go through struggles, you don't lose people. You discover who was never really there for you to begin with. Pain strips away illusions and shows you people's true character. And as painful as abandonment feels, it's also the greatest filter. Let's break this down with real-life situations. The fair weather friend. Imagine you've always been the one people count on. The friend who listens, who gives, who's always there. But then life hits you hard. You lose your job, your relationship ends, maybe you're battling depression. So you reach out to those same people, and suddenly they're too busy. Your calls go unanswered, your messages get shorter. The friend who once confided in you for hours now disappears when you need them. Why? Because they were never really there for you. They were there for what you provided: support, entertainment, maybe even validation. But now that you need something back, the balance is broken. And instead of stepping up, they step away. The family member who judges instead of helps. Family is supposed to be your support system, right? But for many, that's not the case. You open up about struggling financially, and instead of help, you get a lecture. You should have been smarter with your money. You share that you're battling anxiety, and instead of comfort, you hear, "You just need to toughen up." Some people, even family, can't handle vulnerability because it forces them to confront their own fears and failings. It's easier to judge than to empathize, easier to distance than to support. And that's why in times of struggle, you don't see unconditional love. You see conditional support, support that only exists when you fit their expectations, the relationship that couldn't survive hardship. Relationships built on surface-level attraction crumble under real pressure. At first, things are great: love, laughter, excitement. But the moment things get difficult, financial struggles, emotional struggles, personal growth, one person starts pulling away. They signed up for the best version of you, not the real, evolving, struggling version. So they leave. Not because they hated you, but because they never truly loved all of you. When life is smooth, it's easy to have a big circle. Everyone wants to be around success. Everyone wants to be in your good energy. But when life gets hard, that circle shrinks fast. The ones who stay, those are your real people. The ones who leave, they were never meant to be there long term. And as painful as abandonment feels, it's also a gift. Because it saves you from wasting your time on people who were never meant to go the distance with you. It clears space for the ones who will. At this point, you understand why people abandon you when you need them most. Now comes the next crucial part. What do you do about it? Because here's the truth. Being abandoned can either break you or build you, and the difference depends on how you respond. Step 1. Stop taking abandonment personally. When people leave, the first instinct is to blame yourself. Did I do something wrong? Was I not good enough? Maybe if I was stronger, more successful, more together, they would have stayed. Stop right there. Because here's the hard truth. Abandonment says more about them than it does about you. Carl Jung believed that most people operate from their own unconscious fears, running away from things they don't understand or can't control. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. Carl Jung. This means people carry their own emotional baggage, and sometimes your struggle reminds them of the parts of themselves they refuse to face. They leave not because you're unworthy, but because they're not equipped to handle what you're going through. Their leaving is about them, not you. And once you realize that, the pain starts to lose its power over you. Step 2. Stop chasing those who left. When someone distances themselves, the natural instinct is to pull them back. You send that extra message. You make excuses for them. You try to rekindle the connection. Stop. Anyone who can walk away from you in your hardest moments is telling you exactly where they stand in your life. A real friend doesn't disappear when things get tough. A real partner doesn't abandon you when you struggle. A real support system doesn't leave you when you're at your lowest. So instead of chasing the ones who left, pay attention to the ones who stayed. Because those are the people who deserve your energy. Step 3. Turn abandonment into power. Most people see abandonment as a wound. But what if you saw it as a weapon? Because here's something powerful. When people leave you, they unknowingly give you the greatest gift. Freedom. Freedom from false friends. Freedom from draining relationships. Freedom from those who were never really in your corner. Carl Jung spoke about the individuation process, the journey of becoming your true self, separate from the expectations and attachments of others. A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. Carl Jung. Abandonment forces you to go through that inferno. It forces you to face yourself. And when you do, you stop seeking validation from those who left, because you realize that their presence was never the source of your worth. Step 4. Build a circle of true loyalty. Now that you've removed the people who were never truly there for you, it's time to attract those who will be. But here's the thing, you don't find loyal people by searching for them. You attract them by becoming the type of person who values and expects loyalty. Set boundaries. Watch how people treat you in difficult times. Invest in those who invest in you. And most importantly, become the type of person you wish others were to you. The stronger you become, the less tolerance you'll have for weak, conditional relationships. At the end of the day, abandonment is painful. It cuts deep. It leaves scars. But those scars, they're proof that you survived. And now you have a choice. Stay wounded or grow stronger. Because once you truly understand why people leave, you stop fearing it. And when you stop fearing abandonment, you become unstoppable. Now, before we conclude, what's your experience with abandonment? Have you ever had people leave when you needed them most? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if this message resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and share. Because here, we talk about the truth no one else will tell you. See you in the next one.